Come join us each week as we dive into topics about the joys and the struggles of motherhood. By no means are we experts. We're practically flying by the seat of our pants, or should I say, mom jeans. On this podcast, you will find a judgment-free zone where we discuss not only the best parts of being a mom, but the not-so-glamorous parts too. You can expect unfiltered, real mom talk, humor, grace, and a sense of sisterhood. What makes our podcast unique is that we understand there's no one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to being a mother. We're not going to pretend that we know everything too, because we definitely don't. We just want a place to share our stories with you. Thank you so much for tuning in to Mom Jeans, trying to fit into motherhood.
Okay, well, on that note, let's just kick it off and get started. Welcome back to Mom Jeans, the podcast. This week we have myself, Leah,
Danielle,
Michelle,
Lisa,
and Michelle. Sorry.
I think we got you twice.
Well, I heard Danielle say it at the same time I did. So anyways, go ahead.
So we are actually going to kick off this week with announcing our giveaway winner. We just completed our first Instagram giveaway, giving away an Amazon Echo Dot and $50 Amazon gift card. So Michelle, if you will load up that wheel, let's see who we got. Do you know how many entries we had?
Ooh. Yes, I was just about to say that. So we had over 215 people participate, which is really exciting. And again, you could have participated by tagging people, following us, and adding to their story. So we actually had over 2,200 entries total, which is wild to see all the participation. So we thank you all, and we can't wait to give away our winner. So should I hit the button?
Let's do it.
let's do it.
Drum roll, please. Can you hear that fun little jingle?
Yes. Who's it gonna be?
Oh, let me unzoom out a little bit. Just Mrs. Melanie. Congratulations. I will be reaching out and get your address, and we'll make sure to get you your prize very soon here. So congratulations to just Mrs. Melanie. Woohoo!
Woo.
Well, that is awesome. Thank you so much to everybody who participated. That was a lot of fun for us and getting to know some of y'all through the giveaway as well. So thank you again. And kind of similarly on that note, this week we did seek some listener feedback through our Instagram, and we got some engagement and some really awesome questions and feedback from y'all. One of those things being a discussion of mommy burnout. We had the topic of homeschooling come up and some secondary infertility. So all of those things we feel warrant a fair amount of attention. And so we are going to be really thoughtful in responding to those questions and discussing them on future episodes. So I think we will jump into mommy burnout as early as next week. So we hope you come back and listen to that. And then the rest of the topics we will address in the future. And we appreciate your feedback so much. We do hope that you continue to engage with us on our social media channels or via email at hello@momjeansthepodcast.com. And we just look forward to getting to know each and every one of you. So let's jump on in, see what's going on in everybody's lives this week. Danielle, how are things going?
They're going. Yeah, no, they're going all right. Let's see. This week had a lot of play dates. Weston had a lot of play dates, which is awesome. So I know I've been talking about like making friends, and now I'm getting invited to, go have coffee and play dates. And so I went over to someone's house, and Weston got to run around on a trampoline, and he loved it. And so that was a lot of fun. I found out he doesn't really like other kids in his face because he cries. It's so sad. He was, I sent y'all a picture of him in the ball pit, and he was like looking like Danny Zuko, was that his name? From from Greece. No, Greece, right?
Yeah, from
Okay.
Greece.
Yeah. All
Oh
right.
yeah, Greece lightning.
Yes. And a little girl, one of my friends' daughter came up and was like, "Hey, what's up?" And as soon as she got too close, he like his lip came out and then he was crying. So he is my shy little boy. He gets honest from me, just kind of being shy. So that's a lot of fun. I've been pretty busy this week. And then, yeah, if you want me to be real vulnerable, so kind of talking about the, what do we call it? The infertility.
Secondary infertility.
Yeah. I don't know if that's what I'm experiencing, but you know that I had a hard time conceiving with Weston. It took 2 years and then some help. And then, so I don't know why I thought it would be any different this go around. I just thought that it'd just be easier, you know? I don't want to cry. I just thought it would be easier. And
How long has
so
it been? How long have you been trying?
probably since like December. I mean, it's only been a few months, and I know it takes a while for your hormones to get back to normal. But I'm pretty much, my cycle is pretty normal. Using ovulation strips. I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm crying. It's because my period just started right before this, so
Right.
it's like I'm doing all the things, and I just hoped that it would like just come easier this time around. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not.
I will tell you, Danielle, and I'm not trying to lessen your feelings at
Yeah.
all, but I went through that every single month after when we were trying the second time too. Like I was like, I thought I would get pregnant immediately. Like
Yeah.
this is so crazy. And it took 6 months. I mean, it was like, and you tell people it took 6 months, that's nothing, right? But in your mind, a whole month is a long time to wait when you're like, oh man, I really want this, right? Like, so I get it. I get when you set your mind to something and you're like, why isn't this happening? My body should know how to do this now, but it does. Like, you have no idea. Even with those ovulation strips, like Leah, I mean, Leah had to be like to the minute, right? And
Mm-hmm.
granted, she went through a different experience than us, but like, it is amazing. Your body can do incredible things. And like Leah said, in very different situation as well, but maybe that wasn't the baby that was meant to be for you yet. So
Yeah.
I'm not trying to lessen your feelings at all, but just we're here with you and we want to support you. And like I said, it took me 6 months and there were long days because I kept being like, okay, when am I going to ovulate next? Let's do this. Come on, let's try. And,
Yeah.
keep rah-rahing yourself. And it's hard.
Yeah.
So
Well, thank you for that. Yeah. So
I'm really sorry that you are going through that though, and I know that when you are trying to conceive, it's really hard because you live your life in 2 week increments. 2 weeks until I ovulate. 2 weeks until I
yeah.
get my period. 2 weeks until I ovulate, and it's cyclical and redundant, and there's a lot attached to it, a lot of
Yeah.
emotions. So yeah, I'm sorry that you're going through that.
Yeah. And it goes back to like how many pregnancy tests you take. And I'm like, I know it's too soon to tell, but maybe it'll show up. And then, yeah, like right when we hit record, I was like, oh, hold on, I'll be right back. It's like the
Ugh.
start of my period. So it's like
Ugh.
all over. I do see my OB in May. And so I'm sure that we can start up if I want a medicated cycle again. It's just, I was just hoping that I didn't have to do that again. And then, like, with timing and moving next year, it's just like, do I just take a break? Or maybe if I just stop stressing about it, it would just
Oh,
happen.
I hate that. I'm sorry. So many people have said that to us all the time.
I
Oh,
know.
stop stressing. Just relax. It's going to happen when you relax.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
that
Yeah. And I was going to say, Danielle, you're like, I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm crying. Like, yeah, like you have a very, very valid reason to be crying.
mhm.
Like,
I was going to say, Leah, if we're not going to show like this video, can I just give middle fingers? Like, that's not swearing. That's not explicit, right? So I could just
Well, now I want to use that as a
You're
clip.
right. No, I'm sure you can on Instagram as long as it's not on Spotify.
Just blur
We
it
don't have to
out.
hit the E.
Yeah, there you go.
There. Yeah. Well, thank y'all for letting me share. Like, I feel frustrated, but I'm also so thankful that my son is sleeping in the other room, and I'm so blessed, to have him. But I want him to have a sibling, but I'm sure it'll happen when it's supposed to. So that's kind of where I'm going through at the moment. So,
Well, thanks for sharing that with us. And, we're here to cheerlead you along the way. And if there is a day that, you're having a hard time or something, that's what we're here for. So don't keep it to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's
okay. Thank you.
It's an emotional role. It takes an emotional and physical toll on your body.
If I can direct you to episode 2 of the Mom Jeans podcast, we go through quite a bit of this emotional journey. And then episode 3, no, it's just joking. But that's what that's what I think it's cool. We how we recorded it in the different segments of like it. There's no need to listen to our stuff in order necessarily, or if it's 2 years from now, the stuff from those episodes will still be relevant. And so I think that's what's really cool is sometimes you just need a refresher on these journeys that we go through and these small micro intensities.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Lisa, how was your week?
It's we're battling some sleep schedules right now, but we had a really good potty training weekend this last weekend. So it was like, oh my gosh, it might happen for us. We're super excited. So we're kind of holding our breath, like, oh, let's not go backwards, and trying not to emphasize it too much, but also like get her excited to go on the potty. So the toilet training is what the teacher called it today, not potty. So that was good. We had a parent teacher conference today for Hannah, which is funny for a 2-year-old, but it was good. And just I like hate to make it seem like I'm really like targeting my mom, but I came like a big aha moment happened when we were down there about the whole boy thing and my mourning over not having a boy. And she made a comment that I sat like afterwards and sat there for like a few minutes. And I was like, this is why I wanted a boy so badly. My mom made a comment about how she was always so jealous of my relationship with my dad and how she felt like my brother was always so much closer to her and always understood her a lot more. And she had such a clean relationship with him, and he was always accepting of her and like all of this stuff. And I was like, that kind of like hit home of like, oh, okay. So like, and I know a lot of people who have that relationship, like girls with their dads and boys with their moms. And I think that was like my big fear is like, my mom had a lot of jealousy towards my relationship with my dad. And like, I don't want to have that resentment. Like, I don't want to have that feeling of the girls like their dad better than me. And like, I've put so much time and effort into all of this, and for them to like, prefer him. And so it kind of like it was nice. It was kind of like gave me a release of like, okay, this is why I was feeling that way. And I don't have to feel that way anymore. So it was such what is that word I'm trying to think of? It was a relief.
Cathartic.
Anyway. Yeah, lethargic. Yeah, not lethargic.
Cathartic. Yeah.
It put me to sleep. I was lethargic.
You're like, yeah, no, not lethargic.
Yes, cathartic. It was so freeing. But anyways, like it was great. It was fun to have like a self-reflecting moment of like, cool. Like, okay, I can start to get over this a bit, So that was good.
Well, it helps so much when you finally realize the why. Like, what is driving all of this? What is this stemming from? And then once you kind of come to terms with that, you can start start building a path forward.
Absolutely. I do feel like since that has happened, I'm like I said, I like feel like I'm more at peace with it, and I am like, all right, cool. Like I'm good. This is great. So I am thankful for my mom, even though I was like, what a ridiculous thing to say, but it's amazing the more, like I said last week, and like why I am the way I am, the more I spend with my parents, time I spend with my parents, I learn a lot of why I pick up on the things that I do, like time, like whatever. So anyway, that's me.
So we did have, the daycare bug hit again, and this week was a little bit more violent. So on Thursday, when I went to pick Wes up from school, his teacher was like, "Yeah, he didn't really eat much today, but that was it." And I was like, "Okay, well, some days he eats his whole lunch, some days he doesn't. So like, whatever, no big deal." And then he Thursday night, about an hour to an hour and a half after he went to bed, we heard a noise like he pooped in his sleep, which is really unusual for him. So I went in his room to check on him because he's got a little bit of diaper rash, and so I'm just trying to like stay up on it and whatever. I went into his room to check on him, and as I turned on the light, he was actively throwing up. And the disclaimer to my reaction is that we've been very lucky, and Weston has never thrown up in his entire life. So when he was throwing up, I looked at Steve and I was like, "Oh my God, we got to go to the emergency room." And Steven's like,
buddy,
"Calm down." And I was like, "No, like this is not okay. We have to go." He ended up only throwing up twice. So like it wasn't big of a deal. And thank goodness like Steven was home, because otherwise I can guarantee you I would have been at the emergency room. So I may have slightly overreacted.
I totally did not think that's where that was going to go, Leah. I thought you were going to say you started gagging.
Well, no, but then
That would have been me.
not even 12 hours later, I was throwing up as well. And I had a very, very violent 12-hour period. So he passed the stomach bug on to me pretty quickly. He recovered more quickly and easier than I did. Yeah, I had a very violent 12 hours. And then the next morning, Michelle started to have her stomach.
and then they passed it to me. Oh my gosh.
And now
Leah and I were like exactly 24 hours apart on our stomach bugs. And I was like, talk to me about your timeline. What were your symptoms? And it was like identical. It was really wild. Like started at 10, ended at 5. The last hour was especially bad. And then we were fine. Like it was so bizarre.
I've never had an illness like that before, like where it just was so violent for such a short period of time and then gone. Like that was really weird to me.
Yeah.
So Stephen described it really well today. He said we're just playing hopscotch with the daycare illnesses. And I saw a couple of the moms at drop off this morning, and they're like, "Oh man, it's been a rough couple of weeks." And I'm like, "Yeah, one day we will all be healthy again.
Yep.
One day, I hope."
One day.
So,
yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I was going to say my low this week was sickness, and then Sierra's teething. She has 4 molars coming in, and 2 of her, like, I guess you call these the canines coming in. So her mouth hurts, and then she got her 1-year shots today. So her body hurts, her mouth hurts, all the above. But the high was we had our 20-week anatomy scan last week, and that went really well. So baby is 22 weeks, the size of a papaya. So that's my update.
that's so exciting. Did you see the 4 arms and 4 legs?
I don't think I've ever seen a papaya.
Yep, 8 limbs. So we have an octopus. No, I was like, did I just like jinx ourselves? I guess no, but they did the anatomy scan. I think they do a 35 part check, 35 pieces of anatomy, and he was looking good on all 35. So that was a big relief. I think I shared last week, like, I just had a lot of anxiety going into this one. It just been very sick, thanks daycare, and very stressed this first half of pregnancy, between my husband's knee surgery or having our in-laws in town, toddler life, all the above. And then that was my second stomach bug that I had so far and had to be on antibiotics. So anyways, it was a big relief. Like I was like shaking going into there, and then just to like start to see things one by one, it was just like shedding this like layer of stress. And so it just, for me, like, I think this kind of happened the first time too. Like, didn't really feel real until this appointment. Like, this appointment's like, yup, you actually have a kid, a child in you, and it has a face and nose and eyes, and you can see the blood going through its heart. Like, holy shit! Like, sorry, crap. Holy crap! Like, it's it's happening all at once, and I feel like all of a sudden my belly feels big. Clothes definitely aren't fitting, even my stretchy stuff. So it's exciting, but
It's real.
it's real.
Very exciting.
So are you in the third trimester now?
Not till 28 weeks, I believe. So a couple more weeks. So I think at end of May I'll be in
Okay.
third trimester.
So this week we are still following a little bit of our chronological timelines of how we started with our conception journeys, our pregnancies, our birth stories, and now we're going to jump into the fourth trimester. I don't know about you. I actually didn't know that this was a term until I was pregnant, and probably further along in my pregnancy, that the fourth trimester was a very real thing. During the fourth trimester, your body is going through the biggest hormonal change that you will potentially ever experience in your entire life. From all of the hormones that you have from pregnancy to transitioning to the hormones to if you decide to breastfeed or not, sleep deprivation. At least in my experience with your firstborn, figuring out what the heck you do with a newborn, um, and all of the glamorous things. So that's going to be our topic of conversation today.
We should define the fourth trimester too. Like, what is the fourth trimester? Because like you said, you hadn't heard about it before, Leah. So I just quickly Googled it, and I just want to really quickly mention the fourth trimester is the 12 weeks following the birth of your baby. Not everyone has heard of it, but every parent and their newborn baby will experience it. It is a time of great physical and emotional change as your baby adjusts to being outside the womb and you adjust to your new life as a parent.
That's great. Yeah, it also triggers. There's also a theory behind the fourth trimester, too. Is the concept, I think, came from a book. I should. We probably just cut this part. But the concept is essentially came from the theory. I think it's the Happiest Baby book, just around how a lot of animals are born with the ability to be functioning. Like, if you think of, like, I don't know why this is the animal that comes to mind, like a giraffe, like they come out and they are ready to walk, right? And they're able to, they know to go to their mom's, nipple and feed. And same thing with a cow. The theory behind it is also around that if our bodies let us, maybe the baby would stay in there for 3 more months. So they could actually have the ability to do some of those things. But because of how our bodies are, I've heard, because we're so sedentary now, the babies come up at 9 months on average. And so that is where that fourth trimester is so important, to develop those foundational skills of feeding and head control and mobility that a lot of other mammals would develop inside the womb. So just an interesting add on to the description.
First couple of weeks, I found myself very scared of Wesson. Like, very scared of, like, this creature that had joined our lives, and being like, what do you do? And if he would start to fuss or cry, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know. And just constantly like uptight and fearful. And like when he would go down for a nap, I would be scared of when he would do. Um, and I look back and I kind of laugh because now he cries and I'm just like, okay, whatever. Like, it's fine. We'll figure it out. But there was a lot of fear and anxiety for me during the first couple of weeks. And this thing's not loading. And then I'd love to hear from you guys kind of like maybe what were you feeling internally and what were you experiencing externally? Like we had planned to have our first couple of days at home with just the three of us, but because Wesson decided to take his jolly little time to get here, my in-laws actually got here as we were getting released from the hospital. So we didn't have that time with just the three. It ended up being totally fine. My mom was amazing. She cooked every single meal for us, and I think that was so incredibly helpful in the beginning stages. And they were just there to support and hang out and cook and clean, and that was great. But kind of pivoting from what our initial plan was to have the first couple of days as just a family to my in-laws pulling into the hospital as we are walking out. So yeah, so love to know what you guys felt internally and experienced externally.
Well, I'll start. When we left the hospital, or we got the okay to leave the hospital, we were ecstatic. We were so happy because if you heard my birth story, Weston was in the NICU, and so he got to go home a lot sooner than we expected. So that was awesome. I just remember sitting in the back with him, like scared to death. There's the helicopter again flying over. But I just remember being scared to death, like, drive really slow, and, I'm like, "Is he breathing?" And it's the same thing, just the anxiety of, like, not knowing and, like, what's normal and what's not. I came home to a house full of people and 2 crazy dogs that haven't seen us in, like, 4 or 5 days, and, so my parents were here, my sister, and my mother-in-law, father-in-law, and Ryan's grandma, so full house. And so it was like exciting to bring him home, but also it was just a lot going on. So I was already overstimulated and I was like, all right, I'm going upstairs. And I took Weston with me. I was like, I have to feed him and then I'll bring him down because no one has got to hold him at this point yet except Ryan and myself. And so because in the NICU they didn't let anyone, I guess, hold them except us. So yeah, so it was exciting, overwhelming, overstimulating, but like super exciting. So that was my experience coming home.
So you said nobody had held him at that point. Um, when who was the first other person to hold him, and when was that after you got home?
Well, besides Ryan, he did get to hold him after that. We were the ones that got to hold him in the hospital the day after. But I want to say, wow, I don't even know. I think Ryan took him down and handed him to somebody. And I don't know if it was his dad or my mom. It might have been my mom, but it was, yeah, that's all a blur. That's the other thing. The first probably week was such a blur. So for me to recall a whole like specifics would be very hard to do.
Danielle, did you have any requests of your family members before they did hold Weston, or before they came in your house, or anything specific required? Like,
No kissing the baby. That was a tough one for my mom. Don't kiss the baby. That was like that one and wash your hands, which no, I mean, no one really pushed back on that. But then they think I'm a little hippie-ish. So, but yeah, washing the hands and don't kiss the baby was the main one.
well, and another thing, all of us here have dogs. So, what was it like introducing dogs to your babies?
So when he was in the NICU, they had him like his head, I guess, I don't know if he's, I don't know why, like a rag underneath him. And we asked if we could take it from the hospital. And my dad took it home and had him like sniff, the rag. So it had his scent on it and our scent on it. And so we brought him in and, tried to keep him calm. And he was still in his carrier. And they were just like sniffing him and like wagging their tails. Zoe, my big dog, was super jealous, like just sad, and would go like cuddle up on somebody. But my little Yorkie, who can be so annoying sometimes, he followed Weston everywhere. He would like was the protector of Weston. He would like put his back when I was upstairs. He would sit on my foot, so he was like looking out the door, and anyone came near, he was on alert. So I thought that was pretty cool. Ryan said he went up in his book just a little bit because he was like, I just feel like very protective over me and Weston. So that was cool.
So you had a completely full house when you came home from the hospital. Lisa, did you have anybody at your house when you came home?
No. So we intentionally said we wanted a few days at home by ourselves. We don't have family that lives in town, but my parents live 2 hours away. So we asked them if we could come home for a few days. Not asked them. We told them, you're not coming. I was very adamant on not having anybody. It was COVID, so we couldn't have visitors anyways. So it didn't matter for Hannah. And then with Aubrey, we didn't want visitors either because it worked really well for us. That's not true. We did have visitors eventually because Hannah was in school. So my in-laws were in town. Coincidentally, it was like a weird thing with Aubrey coming later than she was supposed to. So they ended up being in town watching Hannah, took her to school, and then they came to the hospital to meet Aubrey. But we had them stay at a hotel with Hannah so that we could settle in at our house by ourselves, which I am a big proponent of that. That is like my sister-in-law taught me that. My sister-in-law was like, listen, there's a lot going on at the hospital. People are in and out all the time trying to take your vitals, taking the baby's vitals, doing all that kind of stuff. Like, and maybe you are comfortable with people seeing you like that, and that's totally fine. But she wasn't, and didn't want people all around like that. And the babies can be seen when they get home. And that I was very glad that we did it that way because it kind of gave us a chance to settle in for both girls for us. So that's what worked for us.
Yeah, I think it's good advice. Like our approach was similar, a little bit different. My parents live 3 hours away, so because we had the opportunity for them to come to the hospital, like there was some part of me that like wanted them to be there with us, especially not knowing how the birth would go. So our ask was like, you guys can come for the birth. As soon as I go to labor, you have, maybe 24 hours to get here and help us out. And, especially for my mom, I was like, I'd love help just like getting settled back at home, but then we want our space. So kind of the agreement was a couple days with us and then give us some time. And then they came back, which ended up working really well. And I actually asked my mom to stay an extra day because I didn't quite feel like we were settled. It was super helpful running errands, making food, and just helping us get there. But the point I just wanted to echo, like the first few days back home, like, and I'd love to maybe even go there next on like, what was it like parenting with your newborn in those first couple of days right after the hospital? I know like that I thought about so much before I had it. But before we get into that, I think, just for my own physical body and everybody else's, like, I had to have like a pad station in every bathroom, and I had a full-size trash bag there with all my tools to like help, keep things clean and dry and things like that. It was a very vulnerable, really raw state. And then furthermore, like trying to breastfeed, like, it's Danielle, like trying to run upstairs. It's just breastfeeding can be so isolating when you're by yourself. And at that point, like I couldn't move. I didn't want to move. So I was like, I had to have like a frank talk with my dad of like, Dad, I'm going to breastfeed right on this couch. I think it's a very natural thing. If you're comfortable staying in the room, great. If you don't, great. Like, let's just acknowledge what this is. And let's do what's best for Sierra at the time. So that was just kind of my experience, and again, having quick chunk for help and then break, and then we were slowly welcome visitors again.
Say with the breastfeeding thing, yeah, I don't know. I wish I was like that. But I had a house full of people, and then Ryan would go be like, "Oh, I'm gonna go check on everybody and see what they're doing," and I would just cry because I was by myself, and he
Yeah.
would come back and hang out, and he's like, "You're doing great." It's just like when I don't know. Yeah, very isolating, like you said. So
Yeah. And I always joke, like, it's way more awkward to breastfeed in front of like an uncle, someone you like kind of, versus like a random stranger. Like I'd do that all day almost, or,
yeah,
after the first couple of days, you kind of learn how to cover up. But like those first 2 days, you're just trying to work on latching. You're supposed to just work on contact. You want to make sure it's all working. Like it's just it's a high pressure, high stake thing that's happening every hour at that point.
yes,
It's
yes,
so frequent.
That'll definitely be a episode in itself for
Yes.
us. We all breastfed for a time, a long time. So yeah, definitely we'll hit on that going forward, because I have so much to say that if I start saying it now, we'll be here until 3 a.m. So I'm going to step out of that
and
one.
we'll also have someone on who didn't breastfeed and their experience with feeding that early on too, because that's its own stress, right? Like you're still going through the same process of making sure your baby has its nutrients.
What was the most helpful thing that you received during that immediate postpartum first week you come home from the hospital?
food, people making food.
Yep, I second that. Having pre-made meals from my friends for Hannah was a game changer.
For me, it was definitely food. We had a friend who cooked a bunch of frozen meals for us and dropped those off, and we just had to put them in the oven to reheat them. Like I said, my mother and father-in-law were here for the first, I think they were here for a week. They did not stay with us. They stayed on an Airbnb, but they came over for breakfast. If we wanted for lunch, they cooked dinner. Food was by far the best thing for us.
Yeah.
Did y'all feel like it was a blur? I felt like I was just in this state of like, I don't know if numb is the word, but I also had to take Percocets or the medicine for. I only took it for a few days, and then once I could just take Tylenol. I did that with my C-section, but I just remember just feeling so out of it. I just remember breastfeeding, and I'm like not even a hello. Like I couldn't make connections. Didn't want to talk to anybody.
I can't honestly say that I remember much from the first 6 weeks of Hannah. I was in so much pain for so long, and then going back into the hospital because of preeclampsia. And like I do remember like Hannah crying and us being like, we had no idea what was wrong, and Brandon would be able to calm her down. But we learned later on, like as you do, right? Like the longer you're with the baby, the more you start trying different things that like most of the time it was because she was cold, and so you just had to wrap her in an extra blanket or something like that. But like, yeah, I remember, because they define the fourth trimester as the first 12 weeks postpartum, and that's a long time, right? That's what, 3 months. So I was miserable, and I was really struggling, big time. I mean, we'll hopefully have somebody on who can help us explain postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety and postpartum rage, that kind of stuff. But yeah, Danielle, I remember so little from the first 6 weeks with Hannah. It's incredible. It's sad, really. Aubrey was not the same though. That second time around for me was, I think because I was in that mindset of like, man, I don't remember much from Hannah. Like I'm going to try really hard to remember this stuff for Aubrey, and try to, totally with a different set of eyes. And I don't know how I got so lucky, but my bounce back from Aubrey was incredible. Like I was like up and moving like normal 2 weeks after birth. birthing her. It felt like it was, I don't know if that's true, but that's what it felt like. Compared to Hannah, it felt like it took a lot longer to recover from. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I've mentioned that to you before, Lisa, is that like I am so bummed that I don't really remember the beginning all that much. Like I remember how I physically felt so much anxiety, like the anxiety had manifested in my body, but what happened those first couple of weeks, I have no idea. Like I really look back and am like, okay, so we got up and fed and then laid on the playmat and then took a nap. Is that what we did for like 4 weeks, 5 weeks? I mean, really, my
And went to the pediatrician and here and there too in the middle of that. Felt like you were there a lot in the beginning.
experience, because
Yeah.
Weston wasn't gaining any weight, so we were doing weight checks, and then we would have the lactation consultant come over frequently. And man, it's just, I guess what I want people to get out of that is if somebody is nearing birth right now and nearing having their first child, like specifically, like setting a realistic expectation that it's totally normal to not remember all of that and for it to just like be a complete blur. Really, my memories start to mostly develop when he was like 7 weeks, and I have a very pivotal moment in my mind when things turned around for us. But
Mhm.
man, it's weird to me to look back and think that there's such a huge gap in my memory of like so many weeks. There's no other time in my life that I don't remember that many weeks, but
Mhm.
it is interesting.
We're just in survival mode. Like,
Totally.
yeah, like you're trying to survive and then also keeping the baby alive, number one job, and that's all that matters, and everything else I think is just a blur.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I've said this before, but I always go back to like that's the most primal period of our lives and our baby's lives. Like it's as much natural instinct as coming together in those like core weeks for both of us um, to survive. Like it's survival, like you said, survival mode at its core.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear from you guys as well, but I think that as I thought about more and more like the fourth trimester and what I would do differently, I did not wash my hair for 5 weeks. Um, I think I maybe took like 4 showers in the first month, if we're being generous, and ate some oatmeal, but rarely didn't like eat a lot of food. And I look back and I think about it, and maybe it's a matter of perspective, because now I'm like, okay, well, Wesson is running around, like I have to be paying attention to him at all times. And you have to be paying attention to your newborn. That's not what I'm trying to say. But like, I wish someone would have told me, like, put Wesson in the bouncer and take a shower. He's not going anywhere. He can't move. Like, or put him on the mat and eat your breakfast and drink your coffee. And like, nobody said those things to me. And so I didn't do anything unless Weston was napping. And so then it's this like, sleep when the baby sleeps. Okay, well, I'll do dishes when the baby does dishes. Like it's that balance, and I think that would be like my one piece of advice for someone.
I showered like the first few times I showered, I put her in the bassinet, but I showered with the curtain open because I like she might jump out of this thing. Like she's not going to jump out of that thing. Nothing's going to happen to her. But like the bathroom's soaking wet because I'm so scared to close the curtain. But I definitely like you can do a lot in those first 4, 6, 8 weeks even with them. I mean, they don't do much. Like my cousin keeps texting me, her baby's now like a month and a half old, and she's like, what do you do with this kid? I'm like, you don't. You let him sleep. And she's like, is she sleeping too much? I'm like, No, I asked the doctor that with Hannah, though. I was like, is she supposed to sleep this much? And she's like, yeah, she sure is. So I was like, okay, good. Like, there's nothing wrong with her. That is where you use the word lethargic. So she seemed very lethargic.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's so true, Leah. Like people would say all the time, like sleep when they sleep, and I couldn't sleep because I was so worried. I don't know who got infiltrated my brain before Hannah was born, but I was terrified of SIDS. I was terrified that Hannah was going to die all the time. And I found out later that's postpartum anxiety. I didn't know that's how that works. And until Aubrey, actually, I didn't know that's what that was. But yeah, like it's crazy those first few weeks. Like I actually will tell you, I am proud of myself for like some of the things that I did better and was more chill about than I had expected, but other parts I definitely was a lot worse than I had expected. So that I will give a shout out to Nanit, the camera, and the breathing strip was a huge reliever for me because put that breathing strip on and like if she stopped breathing, you'd know it. That alarm is scary. I know Leah's heard it.
We actually stopped using the breathing band because the alarm went off twice as false alarms. And I will tell you, like, the fear and adrenaline that ran through my bones. The first time that it happened, I was actually on the phone with my dad and I just started screaming. I was like, I gotta go. Weston's not breathing. I gotta go. And I just hung up the phone and ran across our house to Weston's room, and he was fine. But when I did my like cost benefit analysis of should we keep using it or not, we decided to no longer use it because, and it was only 2 false alarms over the course of, I don't know, we used it for like 8 weeks. So like, really, it wasn't highly likely that there was going to be a false alarm. And it did bring us some assurance, especially in the earlier weeks before we got a false alarm. But those false alarms terrified me.
Yeah, I didn't use anything like that because when Weston was hooked up in the NICU, and if the oxygen or the heart rate monitor alarms would start going off, sometimes it would just unstick, and it would freak me out. And then I asked if I needed to get, what is it called, an owl, the one that you put on the bottom of their foot. I was like, should
The
I get
outlet.
this? And they're like,
The
oh, the
owlet.
owlet, yes. And they're like, if you want your anxiety to go through the roof and like stress about it, like, sure. They're like, I don't think. Yeah, and they were right. I would have checked it all the time. Just like when he moved to his own room, I checked the monitor. Like I barely got sleep. That's jumping ahead. But
Well, that's the thing. Like certain people, right? Data hits people in different ways, right? Like that was a reassurance for me, and it worked great for me. I definitely think that is a big stressor for a lot of people, but it made me sleep at night. That I knew because I was so worried about SIDS. That's going to help you with SIDS, right? Because SIDS is when they stop breathing. So I was like, yeah, that worked for
yeah,
me. So
Yeah, and it's funny, like I've always talked about how much data I love, but we didn't use it at all, right? And it was one of those things. Like the data I trusted was like, you know, trying to research SIDS, the types of the causes of it, and et cetera, and trying to be really cautious of like most of the time it's done from negligence, and we were being the exact opposite of negligent, right, around the whole thing. And also the sleep shack we had to use, thanks to Leah, was the magic baby. What was it? The weighted one we ended up using because she needed that extra.
Oh, the Dreamland?
The Dreamland one as well, and the Nanite strip didn't work on top of it, so we had the Nana camera, which was helpful to see, but we didn't use any of the breathing, which in retrospect, I think it was good for our anxiety.
I think with like my postpartum, where my anxiety came in, and I didn't know this was normal at first, but like intrusive thoughts, but more like if I don't hold on to Weston tight enough, I'm gonna fall, or he's gonna fall down the stairs, or he's over or asleep in a whole different room or in the living room, and I'm cutting something with a knife, and like, oh my gosh, what if I drop this knife? But he's like, not even. And so that makes me actually feel vulnerable saying that, to even like think that, like, but it was more of a fear that he's going to fall down the steps. So I'm like hanging on to the thing. So like, if I get in a car, we're going to crash. I had that for like months.
Been
Yeah.
there. Been
Nobody
there.
talks about it.
I'm
Oh,
still
yeah.
there. Yeah. I think, Leah, didn't you tell me that's considered postpartum anxiety?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like, so Danielle, when I was born, we lived on the second story of a condo building. So at any time we had to leave, I had to take his car seat down the stairs and up the stairs. And oh my gosh, I was so afraid of falling down the stairs. I was so afraid of like dropping him and things of that sorts. But yeah, those types of intrusive thoughts, and they're, I don't know, like the best way to phrase it, but like creative thoughts, I guess, like, because I don't, your mind just starts to play tricks on you, right? Like you're going through this massive hormonal change, and your mind is your brain is you're chemically rebalancing, and so there are those things that just you probably wouldn't think about on a normal. You probably wouldn't think about this far out, or maybe before you had them. I know Lisa and I talk all the time about like getting in a car accident, or like somebody steal. I am so afraid of somebody stealing Wesson while I'm pumping gas. Like, I don't know why. I always lock my car door. Somebody's going to come grab him out of his car seat. I think I would notice, but it's like this weird fear that I have.
I legitimately had that same thing the other day. I was pumping gas, Leah, and I was like, all right, so I've got Hannah on the passenger side, Aubrey's on the driver's side. If somebody went in to get Hannah out, what would I do with Aubrey? Would I just leave her there? Or would I lock the doors? Would I just start running after Hannah? Like, what? Like, this is outrageous. Like, is it the era we grew up in of like watching all the stupid stuff that we watch, or what? Because like that's crazy, right? Like, but I do think that is, Danielle, so normal. Like, I go through that every day. Like, my first 6 months, I think I am stunned I didn't get a speeding ticket, because every day getting off of work, I would drive as fast as I could to go get Hannah, because I was convinced there was going to be a shooter in her daycare. Like, I have no idea what it was, but I lived in so much fear of something happening like that in her daycare. And I would let my mind go wild at night, just laying in bed thinking about that and how terrible it would be. And it was like, and it was like, think like right after a big school shooting. And I just like, I was paralyzed by that fear. It's awful.
Yeah, I started seeing a therapist actually in my fourth trimester, and maybe right after that, and that was like her first question. She's like, "Are you having any intrusive thoughts, you know, about Sierra?" And I think one was actually an interesting, reassuring question to get asked. Like, maybe it would have thrown me off, but like, I hope everyone who's listening and who's gone through this, it recognizes how normal it is, and how it is literally your body just getting in protective mama bear mode in so many ways. But like, all of a sudden you're looking at the world in a whole new way. Like, at least from my perspective, like pumping gas looks different. School was never part of our equation before. Going down the stairs is a whole new thing. Sleeping, right? Like, we're learning how to become mothers. I mean, they say both a baby and a mother are born on the same day. Like, we're going through our own postpartum, or our own birth in its way. And so it's very reassuring, but your mind really needs to adjust. And I feel like I'm still adjusting, and probably going through my own new cycle in some capacity as well.
I just want to ask a question in case a listener was listening. But first off, we're not doctors. Always consult your doctor if you have questions. But did any of your doctors or maybe hold on. What I'm trying to ask is, so we have like certain, intrusive thoughts are pretty normal. When do we need to ask for help? Well, like what is the point that you definitely need to ask somebody for help, do you think? Or what would your doctor say?
So I don't know. And what I found to be very interesting in my experience was when you went to the pediatrician, they give you a postpartum depression evaluation. And so you fill out this postpartum depression evaluation. Well, I didn't have any depression. I didn't. Was I mentally stable? No, I had severe anxiety and I didn't know it at the time. I wasn't aware of it. And I think Michelle was the one who like pointed it out to me originally and then like made a comment and in a positive beneficial way. But like there's a difference cuz I didn't fall into that category at all of postpartum depression. But I fell into the category of debilitating postpartum anxiety. And so Danielle, I don't know. I think I should have asked for help before.
I struggle with this, and this is going to be its own episode when we can get somebody on that can help us break this down. I asked for help from Brandon a couple of times, but he didn't know what to do. And I was like, I'm not okay. I know I'm not okay, but I don't even have the first clue what to do. I don't know who to call. I don't know who to ask. I went to my own OB appointments and they're like, "You okay?" I'm like, "Yep, I'm fine." I lied because I was scared. And that's all they asked me for Hannah. When I went for Aubrey, there was a new doctor and she made me fill out a questionnaire and I felt super comfortable with her. And I was like, man, I wish you were around for my first pregnancy. I really needed you. You would have been so, so beneficial. Like I was so, but again, Leah, like we don't define those things either. Like now looking back at it, I'm like, man, I was in a depression for a long time after Hannah. And I wish somebody, I, I appreciate the pediatrician making me fill that questionnaire out, but it's so easy to lie on. It's so easy. You can tell me a million times, I'm not going to take your kid away from you just because you're depressed. But you think those things, have a bad stigma about taking antidepressants. And am I going to be on these the rest of my life if I do this? And I really, really struggled looking back now. And I'm like, I needed help. I really needed help. And I'm lucky I came out on the side I did. But I was too afraid to talk to people about it. And I did say something to Brandon. And I don't want him to feel like badly that I'm saying this, but like he didn't know what to do either. And I don't know if that's something that maybe the doctors pre-birth can give you like a, hey, yeah, would you listen anyway? I don't know. Again, I really want to have a full episode on this.
Yeah, but it's such a gap. Like you get so much weekly, daily care before you have a baby, the moms. And then the second the baby's born, it's all about the baby. It's just, and then they just say, see you at 6 weeks. Like it is such a miss in our society system, like in our society, in my perspective. Like, I almost think that every mom should get a sleep coach, a feeding coach, or, a eating coach after they're born, the pediatrician, and then, a therapist to some, or a postpartum specialist that really can help focus on the well-roundedness of this really, really intense period. Yeah, it's a really good call out because nobody has gone through this before, especially if you're first and like your partner doesn't know what to do, you don't know what to do, and the resources are like very generic online, and you just don't have the access and the people who are you can be vulnerable and open with.
Lisa, looking back and now that you can recognize that you had some postpartum depression, um, I do remember there were a couple days that you texted me saying you were having a really hard time, and I didn't really know how to respond at the time because hadn't been through anything like this. But looking back, do you think there's anything that you would recommend for a way for somebody to show support to somebody who may be going through postpartum?
Great question.
It is a good question. I think, unfortunately, it's dependent on the person, right? Like you said that Michelle called it out to you in a positive way, and that hit home for you and that worked. I genuinely wanted Brandon to call somebody and for them to intervene. Like I wanted, because I needed that, because I had too much pride, like I was like, I don't need antidepressants. I don't need this. This isn't what I'm experiencing, like I wasn't going to be willing to do it for myself, unfortunately. And that's really sad. It's really sad, that we have that stigma on things. Yeah, I wish we were better about that, right? I think, yeah, gosh, I wish I could put into words how I'm feeling right now, because I feel like I needed somebody to call me, or like my therapist to like reach out and be like, hey, just wondering if you need a session, or like, hey, I think your husband reached out and this is what we think you need, but he, again, like, even, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
There's, I feel like in America, we're all like, we can do it ourselves. Like you said, very prideful, like, we don't need help. And then there's other countries, when they have babies, they literally have a village. They have like their moms and their like in-laws and just their neighbors. I think we've talked about this before, but basically helping you raise your child and then also giving you the breaks that you need. And where we're at, it's not like that. We don't have family nearby. So, and then it makes that, yeah. And it's hard to ask for help because for some reason I feel like there's such a stigma, not so much anymore, but for sure, like back in the day, like stigma against like getting help, talking to a therapist, But I feel like even if you think that you have your whole life together, I think therapy is like great for everybody. But I'm glad that you finally did get the help. What was it, I guess, that made you say, okay, like I need to talk to somebody. If you
I think the hard part is like I was seeing my therapist throughout this whole thing, and I would feel good walking away from my appointments with her, but then it would like reset a couple of days later, right? Like I would see her once a month, and then, it's like in between that month it was like hell, right? And I literally think like I kept thinking, man, I'm gonna be like this the rest of my life. Like I'm gonna feel this way the
Mhm.
rest of my life. This is, why do people have kids? This is terrifying, like, and we could definitely talk about, and one of my girlfriends, I'm so lucky that she was in my life to say this to me, is like, she didn't feel connection with her baby right away. She's like, it probably took me 2-3 weeks. And like, I'll say, I knew I loved Hannah, but I was very like in a blur. I was in a daze, and I was like, why am I hurting so badly? Am I going to feel like this the rest of my life? Like, am I mentally and physically going to feel like this the rest of my life? This is terrifying to me. But I wasn't like, oh yeah, I could be experiencing postpartum depression. I was just like, this is
Sure.
just how it is now. Like not knowing what the signs were, right? And what I should have been looking out for. And I don't think until, I mean, I would say maybe even I look at pictures of when Hannah turned 1, and even then I'm like, yeah, I still wasn't right then. I still wasn't right yet. Like I was better, but I
Mhm.
wasn't right yet. And I I do think it took like her being almost 18 months before I was like, all right, I'm good. And holy cow, I probably had a problem. And
Yeah.
I didn't realize it wasn't me, right? Like it was the hormones, it was the chemical imbalances. It was like, it's not you, right? Like it's not me and that I'm going to be like this forever. It's something bigger going on that could be temporary. And some people, I think it lasts for a lot longer than the temporary. But if I could have just told myself, hey, let's go on, antidepressants for a little while and let's see what happens. But, I come from a family where my mom had severe, severe depression, and she's been on depression medications my entire life. And the thought of having to go through what she goes through terrified me. So I think I wish we could unpack this and somebody could therapize me. That, I think that's a word because I heard it in sex education, so I use it all the time, and I don't think it's a real word. But I wish somebody could tell me, and help me through all of this. And as much as therapy is great, getting the right therapist is even greater. So keep trying. If you don't find that right therapist that first go around, would love to find a new one. But yeah.
Well, Lisa, I guess a question too, like you keep referencing Hannah's birth, but you're still only five-ish months out from Aubrey's birth. Like how do you think you're doing now? Like you're in the thick of it. You just got out of the 4th trimester.
Yeah, I did. I talked to Leah a lot in the beginning of Aubrey's because I was having horrible anxiety, horrible, like panics, like she's not okay. She's got all these issues. Something's wrong with her because it was a totally different baby than Hannah. I knew how to handle a baby Hannah if we got that exact same baby. Well, that's not going to happen, right? No two babies are the same, but I would have anxiety all the time about worrying about her. And then I actually Googled this because I was like, I wonder if I'm the only one who's ever felt this on the planet, which is usually not the case, right? So, but every time that Aubrey would latch, I would get this horrible anxiety. And it was like, I would like start breathing really heavy, and I'm like, what's happening? Like, I don't know why this is happening. Apparently there is like a hormonal release, like right in the beginning of a latch, that sometimes gives people anxiety, and it would give me anxiety so badly. And I'd be like literally like huffing and breathing so heavy while she's on me. And I'm like, oh, this is wild. And it gave me strength in numbers, right? Like hearing that other people have felt this way. I was like, okay, good. Okay. This is, it's going to go away. It's going to get better, but I feel really good right now. Like, I am exhausted because my kids aren't sleeping, and they're not sleeping like on alternating schedules. So like Hannah gets up at 1, Aubrey gets up at 2, Hannah gets up at 3, Aubrey gets up at 4. So it's like, you just like, but I feel good, and I'm like the happiest in life I think I've ever been, because I'm like, this is my family. This is amazing. I'm living for somebody other than myself. And it's such a great, great feeling. But as we'll talk about in mom burnout, there's mom burnout too. And like Michelle said, taking care of yourself and taking some time for yourself, whatever that means for you, is super important. But yeah, it's night and day different. Like Hannah was a depression. Now I can say that. I wouldn't have said that then. I wouldn't have said that, until, like I said, Hannah was 1.5 years old, which is really sad. It's really a long time to go through that and feel so alone in that. And then Aubrey's, I felt like, yeah, there's anxiety there, but it's not crippling like Hannah's was crippling. So yeah, I'm good.
Well, I'm sorry you had to go through that, but I'm glad you're doing better.
Yeah.
And I did want to say it took me a couple weeks too. I felt like I knew that I loved Weston, but we had a hard time starting our breastfeeding journey, and I didn't get to hold him for like almost 24 hours or however long it was. But so I think that it took me a minute. I'm like, now what? And yeah, so I felt that. And I was just thinking it was probably 11 months before I felt normal, maybe 6 months when I finally got out of my brain fog. I felt like I was in brain fog for like 6 months, and then 11 months. I'm like now, like right now, I feel the most normal, like that. Not normal is like my normal, like myself again. So,
Mm-hmm.
and that's 13 months postpartum. So, yeah.
I remember the day before I was supposed to go back to work for Hannah. It was the day before I was supposed to go back to work for Hannah, and I still wasn't sure if I should have gone back to work. And I was like, I shouldn't do this. I'm abandoning my child. she's 4 months old. She's only 4 months old. I shouldn't be doing this. And Brandon was like, let's go to work for a week and let's just see how it goes. And then we'll reevaluate. You can just, we'll quit. You'll quit. It's fine. It's fine. Like, just go. It was the best thing that happened to me. I needed work more than anything. Like, because my anxiety and my depression was so deep, I needed to get out of my house. Like, that first 4 months I talk about all the time was probably the hardest 4 months of my life. The most depressing, like, looking at this baby, loving this baby so much, but being in such a bad mental state myself. Work gave me a sense of importance that I needed outside of just being a mom and outside of just being this full-time caretaker of this baby and not worrying about myself. Work made me feel needed and wanted in a way that I wasn't getting. And it was great for me.
Yeah. No, I was just going to add there too. Like, I think that's an important topic to discuss. Like, what are the things you can do in your community and to help get yourself out and feel some normalcy again. Some of the things that, like, and I'd be curious to everyone else, but like, I really encourage everyone to look at their local birth collective, if you may. A lot of cities have these, or postpartum meetups. Like, we had a Tuesday nursing nook that I tried to go over. It's not right for everybody, but for me, getting out of the house once a day was really important. Like you said, Lisa, the days I was fully inside all day, every day, like, was really hard. And Sierra almost exclusively contact napped for the first 6 months. And so I always talk about baby on time versus baby off time. Like, I had it all day. So I, like, even though I got better at the carrier, like, she was attached to me always. And that was adorable at first, and then very physically and mentally draining to have that. So, like, for me, I needed to find other outlets, and I found, like, going to Target. I think, Lisa, you told me this. You're like, I just went to Costco or Sam's Club once, and that was such a big outlet. So, like, going to the store became, even if it's just an hour, 30 minutes to get out, was big. The nursing nook on the breastfeeding was really helpful, just to see other moms, and it wasn't just for breastfeeding, as it references in nursing, just anything postpartum. I met a couple moms in the birthing class that we were part of, and we met up every Wednesday for a walk, and that was so healing, so therapeutic, just to be outside. But also depends on the season of the year too. I think we got lucky going into summer, like, versus this time I'm prepared because we're having the baby going into winter, and, like, those months I would be walking around the park, it's going to be cold and potentially snowy. And then, there's other meetup groups as well. So just recommend, if that's something and you need that and you don't have a direct community, really recommend searching that in yours. And there's a lot of resources out there that are free and, can help provide outlets if you need it.
So there is one, like, call out that I want to make that I think is super interesting, because we're all talking about kind of our phases postpartum. I was a little uneasy with the idea of no longer breastfeeding, because I had read that some women don't start to experience postpartum depression until they quit breastfeeding. And so I think it's very interesting, because postpartum rears its head in so many different ways and at so many different stages of life. Lisa, you said it was probably like 18 months before you really started feeling like yourself. Danielle, you said rather recently. For me, I think I started to feel better a little bit earlier on, but then the idea of stopping breastfeeding and then going through another hormonal shift and potentially facing a different wave of postpartum this far out from birth. I think it's really interesting to bring in everybody's perspective and everybody's experience, because it is so different for each person. But during that time, there's so many things that we may or may not be utilizing. Were there any tools, products, things that you heavily relied on that you absolutely loved during the fourth trimester that just helped you get through your activities of daily life, or helped you get through feeding or sleeping, anything of that sort? Anything specifically that you guys remember that you would say, you have to have this?
I buy everyone who's having a baby a shusher. That's like one of my things. It's this like orange blob, and you just turn it on and it makes a shushing noise. That became critical for us to put Sierra to sleep.
Do you want to tell the story of when we were in the camper and Brandon thought you were doing that for 30 minutes straight? And he was like, how does she do that? How does she have the lung capacity to do that?
Yes, exactly. We were trying to get both our kids down, and it was a little bit of a cold night. So we were like, let's let the girls sleep in the camper. And I was on one side trying to put Sierra down. Brandon was trying to put Hannah down. And I pulled out the shusher to like try to help her. It's just this like very quiet, calming shh on repeat. I also recommend the Spotify playlist. It was definitely my most played song in 2024 or 2023. Was like a mom shushing playlist. Anyways, and it wasn't until I left the trailer and Brandon had the aha moment that it wasn't actually me shushing, it was the shusher. So
That's hilarious.
That's amazing.
Yes. So shusher, a Solly wrap or some sort of baby wrap was like a must have for me postpartum. And then I have very flat nipples, TMI for a podcast, but that's what this is for. And so I use a nipple shield for feeding for every single feed. So those are like, when I think back to products I use, like those are the three I relied on the most.
Michelle, I do too, and I had to use the nipple shield for a couple months, but now I have nipples. If anyone was curious, after breastfeeding for 9 months, they are no longer flat. It's kind of nice.
I just
It's
took
nice.
notes so that we could put links in, and I just put in nipple wrap. That's not it.
That's fine.
It's not a nipple wrap.
But
don't do that.
But I think I put on the subscription. I got like a new pack of nipple shields every week. Or every 2 weeks. They were great.
Michelle, thanks
I'd
for
always lose
sharing.
them.
Because no, I thought I was the only one.
No.
Oh, I'm crying. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, Leah, to keep it lighter, of what got me through, I would say ice cream. I had a lot of ice cream and cream cheese. Cream cheese and ice cream.
Dairy. Just all the dairy.
You guys got me through
Oh,
this group chat.
that's nice.
What about you, Leah? Did you have any products that you liked?
I know it's controversial, but I did really like the Dreamland baby weighted sleep sacks. Like Wesson started having the best night's sleep.
Why is that controversial?
Because
it's weighted.
Because it's weighted. Yeah, the AAP doesn't recommend them medically, and the reason that from my research that they don't recommend them is that because it can put weight on underdeveloped lungs. And I knew that Weston was fully healthy, and his lungs were fully developed. I wasn't super worried about it. It was a Shark Tank product. I buy every single thing that's on Shark Tank. But the first night he slept in it, he slept 11 hours and 45 minutes. And it really helped him transition from the swaddle into arms out. And he transitioned to arms out pretty early because he started clawing his way out of the swaddle pretty early on. I think it was like, maybe 4 weeks that he was like ready to be done with the swaddle. And so I did.
Get me out of this.
Yeah, and we have like screenshots from the Nana of him like clawing out, and like it was pretty funny. But yeah, we did really like the Dreamland baby sleep sack. We got a Mamaroo, which was awesome for about 2 weeks. Used it excessively for about 2 weeks, and then Wesson was over it. But actually, the thing that he used the longest and liked the most was the baby Bajor. So that was one that loved that. He was super happy, super content with that. But for the immediate weeks postpartum, I did get silverettes for breastfeeding. Those were amazing. They prevent your nipples from getting cracked when
What are those?
little silver cups that go on your nipples that prevent them from getting cracked during breastfeeding, and they work perfectly.
Yes,
So
100%.
definitely recommend those if you're gonna
Yeah.
pursue breastfeeding.
Gosh, man, I wish one of you guys had a baby first. I'm learning so much from you guys. It's crazy how much I didn't know existed because you guys are
Yeah.
good at researching and Googling. That's another question. How much did you Google in their fourth
Too much.
trimester?
Every day.
The worst is
probably.
the
A
midnight
lot.
Googling
Mhm.
and midnight
Yeah.
shopping when you're
Yeah.
breastfeeding in the middle of the night or feeding in the middle of the night. It's a dark place.
Oh yeah.
Amazon showed up every single day. I couldn't tell you to this day what I bought. I have no idea, but
Yeah.
man, those 2 a.m. Amazon scrolls, those got my bank account.
That would be fun to look at your purchase history during that time and be like, "Oh my gosh, remember that?"
What was something that you bought that you didn't need, or you'd look back and say, okay, that wasn't beneficial, or I shouldn't have spent that much money on that?
We were given the tip after our baby shower to not use a baby bath. So we would just put a towel down on our bath and put her on the towel, and we returned the baby bath so that I got Amazon credit to buy something for myself. That has worked out great for us for both girls. But that's one product I know I felt we didn't need that we didn't have anyway. I'm trying to think. I'll try and think about that. That's a good question.
Yeah, I didn't use the bath either because I used is it the Angel, you know what I'm talking about? The one that's got the holes in it and it's like
That's what we had.
what is that
Yeah.
called? Cuz we use that every day. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's the
Like
one
an
they
angel
lay on.
baby, angel bath.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That one and we got the swing on our registry. We didn't use it very often. He didn't like to be in it for too long. So it was just big and took up a lot of
Yeah.
space. It's in the closet over here now, just broken down. But yeah, we didn't use that very often either. I feel there's a lot of stuff we didn't use.
Michelle, I know that you guys also use this, but the Otteroo.
Oh, yes.
What is that?
It made
the
Otteroos that like inflatable thing that goes around their neck and
Oh.
lets them float.
Oh yes.
It looks like a child torture device,
Yeah.
to be
Yes.
completely honest.
Really? I saw that. I was like, oh my gosh. It was like popping up in my Instagram
JJ
every day.
Watt, football player, used it on his kid and got crushed on that. People were furious he was using that thing because it's so dangerous. It's like, yeah, it's dangerous if you leave your kid unattended thinking that thing's going to save its life.
Well, and that's just it. So we used it with Wesson because it came highly recommended to me from my boss at the time. And we would put him in the bathtub and I would get in the bathtub with him. So like I was right there holding him. It held him up and he kicked and flipped, like he kicked around and had a great time. He absolutely loved it for a short-lived period of time, for like a couple weeks. And we had fun with it. But yes, exactly. Safety disclaimer: do not leave your child unattended in water. Do not expect anything else to save a newborn's life. So yeah, we were always there. Like I was in the bathtub with him, like holding him and stuff. But it was a short-lived, fun little product.
Yeah. We didn't even get to colic, and there's so many topics we could get to in the fourth trimester, but like we had like week 6 through 10, right when you think you're out of like the easy stuff, maybe 6 through 12, Sierra was so fussy and screaming nonstop for hours. Like we had lactation consultant trying to figure out what's going on, and especially around nighttime. What's it called? The witching hour. Oh my gosh, I remember someone telling me I remember posting on Instagram. I was like, what did people do to get through this witching hour? Because it was just to the point of tears every night. And like The only thing that ended up working for us eventually was I'd sideline breastfeed until she would fall asleep. And that became like a big tool for us, but just could not get her to calm down. And it was, someone was like, one day nighttime is going to be your favorite part of the day. And, you know, just know that time is your best friend. And like, at one point that was so hard to hear. I was like, I just need the magic bullet that's just going to make the switching hour go away. But like, every time I put her to bed now, like, I actually think about that. Like, that actually brings me to tears because it was such an intense period. And like, having bedtime be so peaceful now, and I know it won't always be peaceful, but like, that was a really trying time, and being able to have that. But I guess I got back to like, one of the things that would help her cure her colic was water. And that's the Ottaru we helped too, because it would actually help her get some energy out and channel her angst of whatever was causing it in different ways. But yeah, I read an Instagram post. It was like, if a baby's upset, just add water, whether it's a toy, whether it's a water table, whether it's a bath, whether it's a puddle. And I found that to be really true with Sierra.
Man, the witching hour was tough.
I was just going to say, you guys taught me about the witching hour, and Aubrey had it. And now looking back, we know her witching hour. Maybe it's probably not a witching hour if you know what it is, but she was overtired. We just didn't put her down early enough, and she would lose her mind. And like we've talked about before, she screams like a banshee. She is the loudest thing on the planet when she's upset, and it's just heartbreaking because you're like, just let yourself go to sleep, you'll be so much better. But Leah, I know you went through witching hour, right?
Yeah, and I wish I could tell you how many weeks it was, but like I said, like the beginning was such a blur. It had to have been somewhere around 3 weeks, where from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. every single night, Wes was screaming at the top of his lungs, inconsolable, like just unbelievable. Nothing would help. Like, we could get him to calm down for, I don't know, maybe like 10 to 15-minute increments if we went outside, but then he would get all wound up again, and we'd come back inside and try it. We ended up doing what we called Billions, Boobs, and Baby in Bed, because we would get in bed, we would turn on the show Billions. Weston would just use me as a pacifier for like 2.5 hours. And that was the only thing that could, like, and sometimes playing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Like, if I never hear that song again, I'm good. But
Be too soon.
Be too soon, exactly. We eventually learned that he was hungry and he wasn't getting enough food. So once we figured that out, it did decrease. He still had, like, afternoons were still really difficult for him until he was about 4 months old. Then he got a lot better, and now we're back in this stage of like 4 to 5 p.m. is unpleasant. And then 5 p.m. dinner time, bath time, bedtime is all good, but we've started to revisit that, like 4 to 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Not the best. But yeah, the witching hour is tough. And it was funny because I was talking to a friend and I was like, okay, her kids had the witching hour really bad. I was like, when does this end? And she's like, I think I remember it like getting more tolerable between like 12 weeks and 12 weeks and 16 weeks. And then we came over to her house one night, and her son, who was 2, was losing his mind. And she's like, yeah, you know how I said that the witching hour ends? She's like, it comes back. I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think it's just, especially now that as the kids grow, they change, they're feeling new things, they're learning new things. But when you're dealing with the witching hour and postpartum and trying to have some level of self-care and feed yourself and feed the baby and start to go back to work, like Michelle, like that phase that you had with Sierra, I mean, you were probably slowly starting to assimilate back to work at that point, right? And that's an additional added stress, and it's so much.
Totally.
Yeah, Weston also went through the witching hour, I think, in cluster feed, and I just remember being so tired. rewatched all the episodes of The Office. So that was kind of what we did for that. And then you said you did Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. I wanted to tell you Weston's song, even now, Claire de Luna. Lune. Claire de Lune is his favorite. I played it in the womb all the time, that and some classical music because I was just being fancy. I don't know, just playing some classical music. But he hears that song and he would just stop, and he still does it. So that was his song.
I created a playlist for Wesson, like when he was born, and would play it for him like every day. And it is kind of cool because now, if some of the songs from it, like he reacts a little bit. Like the one song that I played every single day when I was pregnant for him, if he hears it now, he's still like, he will calm down. It's not a calm song, it's like totally hype, but yeah, it is interesting how they pick up on that.
Yeah. Well, we've covered a lot.
And yet not all of it.
I know.
I feel like,
but I mean, we're having a really good, discussion about kind of like what I remember, or what we all remembered, like what stuck out to us the most. I felt like during that postpartum, but again, a blur.
a blur of a very complicated time in life.
Maybe we end with a question of the week, just a pivot of what's one of your favorite memories from your fourth trimester? Like a moment that stands out.
I think the first smile that you get from them is like, oh my gosh, that was melting. That melted my heart that she like could eat, both of them could recognize my face and I could bring a smile to their face. That really warmed my heart.
That's what I was going to say too. I just remember him being in his swaddle and smiling at me, and Ryan was like, "Why are you crying?" And I'm like, "Because he just smiled at me and it just melted my heart." Like you said, it's just makes it all worth it, the way that our babies look at us,
Yeah, Wesson's first giggle was like the most precious thing. And that was when he was 7 weeks old. And once he decided, like, or once he figured out that he could giggle, like, he just didn't stop. And I remember my dad coming to visit shortly after that. And I have this video of my dad and Wesson just sitting on this chair, actually, giggling at each other. And it was just like so sweet. Starting to see their emotions and personality develop is like each one of those stages, like each one of those moments is really, really special. I think for me, though, a huge memory and turning point for us, turning point for me postpartum was Michaela's barbecue when he was 7 weeks old, because it was the first time that we left the house for longer than 45 minutes. And Wesson did amazing and he was adaptable. And it was the first time that I felt like I could breathe through my anxiety. Like I remember we were outside and it was like getting close to nap time. And I was like, okay, we need to go. And Steven's like, let's just see. Let's just try and see. And I put the baby wrap on. Wesson went to sleep in the baby wrap. And it was like, okay, my life isn't over. Like, this is going to be good. So that was a really big moment for us.
Do you feel like after that you were able to start getting out a lot more? And because that was a question I had earlier. Yeah.
For sure. It was because up until that point we had not at all. And that was aside from going on walks, like I would go on walks with Wesson all like for hours each day because he was so calm in the stroller. But aside from going on walks, like we didn't do anything. And so I think after that, like maybe even the next day, we went out for breakfast. And like it was like an order at the counter place and it was quick service, but like we did it. And then it was like each experience gave me more confidence to go out in public for a little bit longer. I will say I still apologized to everybody around me if like Weston started crying. Like I remember I was at breakfast one morning with my high school best friend, and Weston started crying, and then I started crying, and I was looking at everybody. I was like, I'm so sorry, and like everybody was so nice. People with always like, in my general experience of being a mom, people have been a lot kinder than I expected them to be when Weston has been fussy or something along those sorts. So.
I was gonna say, like, smiles and giggles were great. I don't know, when I asked the question, what came to mind was this moment. It had to have been in the first week. It was, I just remember, like, because they're just kind of constantly sleeping and on you, and bedtime is kind of a concept at the time. It's not really a plan. And I don't know why Lady Gaga was performing on the TV, but she performed the song "Hold My Hand," and I just had, like, I think in the first week of postpartum, you should at least have one good cathartic, to bring the word back, cry every day, because it feels so good. And listening to the song "Hold My Hand" by Lady Gaga, I recommend reading the lyrics when you're ready for a good cry, but feeling like, like all about protecting your loved ones, and hold my hand and I'm going to be there for you. And so having my baby in my hands, listening to Lady Gaga sing that song was like such an intense, powerful, but positive moment in my fourth trimester.
I'm going to have to listen to that song. I don't know that I've ever heard it before.
Me neither.
Be warned. It's so good. It's so good. Sierra definitely knows that Gaga, and she points to the like Google Home if we're like to play Gaga. So she now is into like Poker Face and like Bad Romance are more of her vibe now. But like, I'm gonna say it started with Hold My Hand by
That's
by
amazing.
Lady Gaga.
That's so good. Yeah. That's really funny. It is amazing to see just the connection between the babies and music. Like I think it's really cool, because I think it seems to me that it is innate that the babies, like, they just all seem to have this attachment to music. And where do we lose that in life, and why? Because I think music is so, at least for me, it's very, very therapeutic. And like, I can tie so much to every decade of my life. Like I hear a song and I have an instant flashback. I know exactly where I was when that song was like my favorite song. And so I think I've really enjoyed seeing music through Weston's eyes.
And if you're ready for it to start crying on the lyrics, it's in the chat. But I don't know, is that a moment to pause for the day?
Is that a baby rap
for our fourth trimester? Is that a baby rap? A Solly rap?
It's a good one, Danielle.
I'll be here all night.
That was great. Mom jokes.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, they're just as bad as dad jokes.
Maybe we need that to be part of a segment. Yeah, we throw a mom joke into every episode.
Yes.
Mom jeans and mom jokes.
I love that.
Love it.
Great.
All right.
That's a wrap.
And that wraps up another episode of Mom Jeans, trying to fit into motherhood. Thank you again so much for listening to us. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please consider giving us 5 stars so other mothers out there like you can find us and listen. If you would like, you could follow us on any of our socials at Mom Jeans, the podcast. If you have questions, would like to send us your birth story, or give us suggestions or things that you would like to hear, please email us at hello@momjeansthepodcast.com. See you next week.